We are privy in our day and age to witness the return of the hostages. We've seen 3 today. B'ezrat Hashem, in the coming weeks, we'll be seeing the return of the rest of the hostages, B'karov, B'ezrat Hashem. And it's very beautiful to watch the pictures and the videos that are being delivered, the reactions of deeply emotional connections, an expression of intense relief, joy, overwhelming gratitude. Of course, hugs, tears, kisses, moments of disbelief as finally they can reconnect after a year and a half of separation, of the unknown, of not knowing what's going to be. Obviously, many will have a sense of anxiety, maybe even a little difficulty adjusting to the new ordeal that is coming around. But as we all know, there's a tremendous amount of love, support, reuniting, and the remembering of days of yore. That is the expressions of emotion that we are privy to, that we are watching, that we can observe, that we can see. That's not something that you get to see very often after a full year and a half of separation, to be able to see such a thing. Now the truth is, it reminds me when we see these pictures, and I want to bring out a certain message when we see this concept, in order not to leave it empty, that it should remind you of something that we saw, or at least read, not long ago, a couple weeks ago. Actually, at the time that this the releasing of the hostages was supposed to take place was approximately 2 and some weeks ago. And that was exactly during the time of another reuniting, and that was the reuniting of Yosef together with his brothers. As we all know, Yosef also had a tremendous amount of separation, kebiyachol, anxiety from his brothers. And the Midrash even writes, Keshem shalapiyas Yosef et achiv ela bebechia, just like Yosef cried when he saw his brothers. Because it says, "V'yitenet kolo bebechi," so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be Geulah otanu. In the time when Mashiach comes, there will only be a Geulah. The redemption will happen mitoch abechiyah. Shenemar bebechi yavo b'tachnuni yavo. Also, just like we left Mitzrayim, and just like we were left to Beit HaMikdash with Bechi, just like Yosef HaTzadik reunited with his brothers with Bechi, so too the Geulah will happen. What? With Bechi. With a certain cry, which is surprising. Tears is what we're going to express at the time when the Geulah comes. I would think about simcha, dancing, music going on, excitement, and you're talking about crying. How could that be? So I want to tell you a beautiful pshat from Rav Gold once, which really connects to what we are witnessing in front of us. And that is, of course, we know Yosef HaTzadik for 22 years had a tremendous amount of separation from a tremendous amount of time separated from his brothers. During that whole time, he was waiting, yearning, hoping, couldn't wait to see. He knew he dreamt that they would come one day and bow down to him. He knew that nevuah, that prophecy would come one day to fruition, and he just didn't know when. Could be 20 years, could be 40 years, could be 5 years. Who knows how long it's going to be? But he waited day by day, week by week, year by year, hoping that when is going to be this time period that it's going to come. He was waiting for that time when B'ezrat Hashem will be able to reunite with his brothers. Obviously, there's a natural inclination to be with their family, but over here was much more of an extreme situation. Yosef HaTzadik was surrounded by a bunch of lewd people that were surrounded by filth, by sorcery, people that had nothing to do with the language he spoke. And I don't mean just the physical language, just the way he thought. He was waiting to be back with his brothers, with the ones he loves, with his Abba, that he so longed to go ahead and learn Torah with. These are people that are the antithesis of what Yosef HaTzadik stood for, as we are also familiar with. And he couldn't wait, and he was dying. He was just looking and waiting and yearning for that time when he can come back together and see them. And then finally he sees them. Could you imagine that feeling after 22 years of being able to see those brothers that he hasn't seen, those faces, those familiar faces which were so distant from him approximately 22 years ago? And suddenly there was an unbridled happiness. There was an intense emotion that was unexplained. Something that you just can't relate to. Baruch Hashem, you shouldn't have to relate to such an experience. But the moment he was waiting for finally came. Ad kedei kach that we know, lo yuchal li'itapek. Eventually Yosef HaTzadik couldn't even hold himself. V'yitenet kolo bebechi. And therefore he had to go ahead and cry a couple times. V'yevech Yosef. He ran away a couple times with them just because he couldn't stop and he had to cry. It was too painful for him to watch. Crying? Crying? What are you talking about, Yosef? Why are you crying? What a paradoxical type of feeling. I would be happy. I would be besimcha. Why don't you go ahead and smile? This is the climax. This is the epics, the biggest time of your simcha crying by seeing them? What's pshat? The answer is, as we all know, when you have an appreciation for a certain situation, when you have a relief from a very difficult time that when you went to, and you have a reconnection, these are what we call tears of joy. If you look it up, there's tears, of course, that come from a point of depression, of anxiety, of upsetness, of being alone. But there's something called tears of joy that come from a place of a vacuum that was filled. When there was a separation, when you felt alone, you felt that you were missing something, when something was lacking, and you come back together with that person. When your neighbor and your good friends, one of your best friends, your neighbor goes away, and then eventually she comes back. Was it 2 weeks or was it 3 weeks? I don't know, but I know she went away. I'm so happy to see you. It's very nice. 2.5 weeks, 3, I don't remember. You went away for the month. Oh, very good. You went away up to the mountains. Very nice. It's fine. You miss them, but it's nothing the same as when you have your child. Your youngest child that went away for the first time to camp for 2 months. The whole time you're kind of waiting. When's it going to come back? When can I see them again? You're missing them. It's that time that I can go ahead in that vacuum that was missing, and you were waiting and uncontrollably looking and hoping and being in touch with to see how soon will I be able to see that person. We less relate to it because, unfortunately, if I could say, we can see everybody on a screen. And even though it's very hard to get a situation where I just can't see the person, talk to them for sure, but even just to be able to see them is also something that used to be something very special. That feeling of waiting, of yearning, is a little bit missing by us. But eventually that vacuum that was lacking and put away, accumulated, and it went more and more and more until, what a geschmack, how enjoyable to finally be able to get back together. The feeling of enjoyment just brings back tears of joy. It's an incredible type of exhilarating feeling. Of course, I wanted to say the same example with one spouse. Just I wasn't sure people on the camera wouldn't always know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, okay, let them go. I don't care. Let them go for 2 weeks. What's bothering me? But I'm just pointing out that there's an idea and a concept of a reuniting which brings tears of positivity, of joy, of excitement, similar to the tears that we are seeing in front of our eyes as we watch these hostages reunite with their families that they've so missed, that never knew and weren't sure if they would ever be able to see them. And here's the clincher. And here's the most important part about it. How big are those tears? How much do you miss them? Where is the biggest amount of simcha and sipuk and satisfaction that comes? It's as much as you were missing them during that whole entire time period. As much as you were thinking about them day by day. As much as they kept recurring in your mind over and over again. How much? I can't wait. None of us can imagine the amount of pain and anguish these parents were going through, the mother and the father, they were just dreaming about them every night. They couldn't sleep a proper night, as I heard testimonies from the parents of these people that were speaking on the radio. They were just waiting, and they could sleepless nights and always thinking, when will they come back, if they'll come back, and how they'll come back, and what's going to happen, on a constant basis, thinking with what we call kisufim, a yearning, an incredible need to want to be together with that person again. In other words, the amount of simcha, the amount of satisfaction that a person has, is as much as he was missing that person, as much as he was thinking about them, as much as he was concerned about their welfare, as much as he was waiting, I can't wait till it comes back. And that's really what the Midrash was saying. We have a perfect understanding now today of what that Midrash was telling us. Just like Yosef cried, and he had a tremendous cry. Why? Because he was waiting for 22 years, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. He was waiting to see when is that moment when they will pass through those gates of Egypt, through the gates of Mitzrayim, and I will be able to see those brothers which I also miss. Because he was waiting and waiting and waiting. Vayitan et kol bebechi. That's why there was a tremendous cry. Kach ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu goel et Yisrael ela mitok bechia. So too the Geulah, the final Mashiach will come, the real redemption will come when there's a bechi. When there's a tremendous amount of crying, of tears, of yearning, of desire. I miss you, Tati. I haven't seen you in so long. It comes from a place of kisufim. Kisufim is just a word that means just a yearning, a redemption, a waiting for when that happened. And that's what it is. all about Mashiach has everything to do with, are you really waiting for it? Yes, we passed a tremendous amount of pogroms, of anti-Semitism, of terrorism, of confusion, of wars, of difficulties over the past 2 years, and especially what we've seen in this past, year and a half and maybe a century of what we've gone through. But that bechi is bebechi avo, that should lead us to a place of yearning. Abba, I want you back. It should come to a place of just coming, I'm missing that experience that we had together, living together in the same house at the Beit HaMikdash. It comes to a place of realizing how much is away, how much has been far away. And when you do that, you start experiencing things that you never had before. When we are together with our children, we take them for granted. En malasot. When you're together with your spouse, you take it for granted. It's someone you live with day in and day out on a constant basis you don't know. But when they're gone for 460 days, when they're away and you don't know if they're going to come back, suddenly when you come back together, you appreciate that child. You just appreciate that spouse. You appreciate that person so much more. You remember all the good times and the bad times that you had together. And the bechi just comes out. The cries, the tears are all over the place. Because it comes from that experience of filling that vacuum, filling that space that we one time had together. And now we are able to experience it again together. That's exactly what the Geulah is going to be all about. It's going to be about those people, those who are interested in waiting for, when am I going to be able to reunite with my father? When am I going to get back together? And we feel the pain. And that's the reason why, yes, we go through so many difficulties in our exile. Because Hashem is trying to remind us, you're handicapped. You're not in the right place, Chevra. You should not be as comfortable as maybe you think you should be. It's here to remind us of, yes, bebechi yavo. We left with bechi, but we're going to come back with bechi, with tears of joy for those who are waiting. For those who are counting the days. For those who said, one more day, maybe it's going to be tomorrow. Lamashal, as we all know, this I'm finishing, the famous Chafetz Chaim. Who's greater than the Chafetz Chaim, that we all know, if you read the stories about him over and over, this was his life period. When he heard rustling of trees outside of the window, he would run to the window to look. Maybe he's coming. When he would see people talking, he was wondering if they were being mitzochech, if their conversation was privy to the fact that is, when's Mashiach coming, or when is it happening? And he even writes in Parshat Ve'etchanan, he writes his words, when people say the words, Ki mechakim anachnu lach, ve'bechol yom sheyavoy, he says, it bothers me that they only say it as like lip service, as a cliche, as an ideology. Do people really live the fact that what they're saying? It has to be something real, it has to be something in your bones, that you're waiting for it to actually occur, you're waiting for it to happen. There's an expression that some people say, until Mashiach will come. They use some expression, you come so late, and Mashiach will come before you come. I've heard that expression. Some poskim say that's a Maaseh Kfira. It's one of the 13 Ikrim. One of the 13 principles of faith is that B'chol Yom Sheyavo, you have to be waiting for Mashiach. And when you use an expression such as, you'll be, Mashiach will come before you come, you realize what you're expressing. You're trying to say that Mashiach is taking his time. It's going to be a long time. It's going to be a long time till he comes. You have to be extremely careful with such an expression. And the Chafetz Chaim brought this an example to this concept, and this will finish from the Beit HaLevi. He says the Beit HaLevi was ready to retire. He was in his upper 60s and the 70s. He was in Warsaw. And they sent a letter to him from Brisk, and they said they were looking desperately for a rabbi. Brisk was one of the bigger cities, and they wanted the Beit HaLevi to go to Lador in order to be their rabbi. And he said, he sent the messengers back, and said, I apologize, I can't do it, I got to be able to learn, I have to go ahead, I don't have many years left, who knows how long I'm going to be here, and I got to be able to learn, to be able to make a few more siyumim on Shas. I can't do it. I can't take the shteller. So the shlichim went back, and then they sent 2 more shlichim. They sent an entourage of shlichim, and on those shlichim, those messengers came and told them that, Rav, you have to come, you have to do that. And he said, but I told you I can't. He said, yes, but they told me to say, Yada Rabbeinu, ki 30,000 yodim yoshvimu mechabekim lekabel you should know there are 30,000 Jews who are sitting and waiting to be Makabel, the panim of the Rav, to be Makabel the Rav. If you can come, and we'll give you a tremendous amount of respects, but we need you to come, and there are many people waiting for you. So the Rav went into the house, he went to the Rebbetzin, and he said, get my Bekesha, it looks like we're going to Brisk. And the Chafetz Chaim would hear this story, and he would be mitonen, he would give over a krechs, a sigh, and he would say, if the Brisker Rav if the Beit Levi can go to Brisk because 30,000 people are waiting, then Mashiach will come if there are also 30,000 people waiting. If we have people that are waiting, even though even if you wouldn't want to come, but if the people are sitting and waiting and yearning and looking and desiring his presence and are waiting for him to come, he said, then of course he would have been here a long time ago. Obviously that desire is at fault. Obviously, it's a little bit hindered. It seems to be we might just be a little bit too comfortable. And that's why it seems to be that he's not giving his ever-presence. And we have to go ahead and feel the presence of the missing of what's happening. Look at what we've gone through this past year and a half. And Baruch Hashem, we should see all the shvuyim, all the captives that come back, and we will see that reunion of those families that come together, but it should remind us of the ultimate reunion that we're looking to have, that coming back together that we should have in the time when Mashiach should come, and it will come with a lot of simcha, but with a lot of bechi, a lot of crying that will happen at the time when we will see and realize how much we were missing, how much that relationship has been severed. In 1967, when Baruch Hashem we were able to get Yerushalayim, and we finally had the Kotel in our hands, there were two soldiers that were there, one of the first two soldiers, there's a very famous picture about the soldiers that went and saw the wall, that saw the Kotel at the time. And one of those soldiers started crying like a baby. He started crying, both irreligious people. And one soldier turned to the other soldier and he said to him, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" He said, "I'll tell you the truth. I'm crying because I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know why to cry. I see this wall. I know there's something about it, but I don't know why there's something to cry about it." And that is really the bechi of the time of Mashiach. We have so many brothers that are so far away. There is so much machlokes and distance. And the more we feel it, the more we will yearn for it, the more we'll feel the vacuum of it, and eventually we'll be able to see the beauty of Mashiach will come, and then we will have those incredible tears of joy. B'ezrat Hashem b'mirah.